Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Saturday. Happy Day of the Dead, or rewarding Day of the Dead, as it may be. It is November 1st. It is 8:30 in the morning. It is time to begin our budget hearing. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Yes, ma'am.
Trustee Vogel. Here. Trustee Papantos.
Present.
Trustee Vito.
Here.
Trustee Lang.
Here.
Trustee Kruger.
Present.
Trustee Rufato.
Here.
President Horker.
Here. Do we have any citizens' comments today?
Nope, not today.
Well, that moves us right into the meat of the matter. Mr. Svandilis, you want to read this? Discussion of the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget for the Village of Wheeling.
Thank you.
John.
There we go. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Although we are here today to present the draft FY26 budget in its current final form, this really is a living document that took many months of hard work to prepare, lots of revision, and a fair amount of discussion. For the public's perspective, there is a liaison program that the village has had in place for a number of years, which assigns a elected official to a specific department, which allows for the opportunity for them to take a deeper dive into the operating budgets, which we don't really cover in detail today. We're focusing more on the high-level outlook for the village and making some higher-level decisions today. But the process includes the opportunity for elected officials to take that deep dive into the operating budget and do a thorough review. So that process has taken place and brings us to today. I would like to begin by thanking the staff. As I said, this is a living document. What we are presenting, of course, looks forward, but budgeting really is a process of both planning for the future and making sure that we are working hard on the present to make sure that we stay fiscally responsible in every decision, and that is a daily occurrence from staff. And of course, none of that is possible without the leadership of the board. So thank you all for making today possible. Similar to years past, we will present to the board and the public the current and projected financial positions for the village through a few major categories. We will begin with the economy and its impact, projections for the future, and then at the end of the day, we're going to talk about some choices for the board to make as we move forward. Director Smith will present a detailed overview of the village's financial position, and after that we will go through each of the pink sheets, which are expanded level sheets, which for the public are programs, people, or anything else that is not part of the existing budget. So anytime that we go beyond our current service levels, either through direct services or through purchasing, we bring that separately to the board so that decisions can be made specifically on each of those items, and it gives us an opportunity to discuss and present each of those individually. So we will do that at the end of the meeting following Director Smith's presentation. The 2026 proposed budget demonstrates the village's financial health is remaining strong, grounded in discipline, fiscal management, conservative budgeting, and strategic reinvestment. We are most likely heading into more challenging times again, and therefore the theme this year is consistency in policy and practice. We've maintained this stability without increasing the property tax levy in the last 4 of the 5 years, relying instead on sustainable growth in sales, income, and service-based revenues. This approach, combined with targeted cost control, has preserved essential services and provided relief to our taxpayers. This budget continues to reflect those effects of solid policy and practice. So some big picture highlights. This is the 9th of 10 balanced budgets. We have a surplus this year, although it is lower than what we have seen in recent years. We've continued to provide TIF surplus distributions. We have full funding of pension contributions as well as all capital and equipment funds, a strong fund balance, growth in sales tax receipts, practical pay-as-you-go capital planning with nearly $24 million spent last year in capital projects, and long-term financial stability. Those are all things that you've heard in the past, but I don't think should be overlooked. There are not many communities that can say that. We really have a strong foundation, and that, like I said, is the theme today, is as we look to more challenging times to make sure that we stay on course. One of the things that we have been planning for quite some time is that the village will be debt-free by 2030. What precedes that, though, are two rather significant balloon payments that we have anticipated for years. And today we're going to present some options to make sure that we have enough revenue to not only cover those payments, but to continue the trajectory that we have for the last several years. So we will talk about those in much more detail. With that, I think Director Smith, you can dig in.
Good morning. Thank you. Just get settled in here. A couple quick reminders before we start. My mouse isn't working. The Wheeling Special Census is currently paused, but as soon as the government shutdown ends, that'll kick back off, and we will send out, or the Bureau will send out your first ID cards to log in and respond to the online census. So be ready for that. And if you wanted to review the entire proposed budget, it can be found at www.wheelingil.gov. You can click on Transparency, Budget Information, and the 2026 proposed budget. Just going to grab my mouse here. I also wanted to take a second and just introduce the new finance staff. We have a lot of new faces as a result of retirement. Sitting directly to my right here is Joanna Scupian, our new Deputy Finance Director. She's been doing a great job helping fix the banking changeover and a number of other changes that we have going on, including the census. Then to her right, we have Michael Widener, our Accounting Supervisor, who did a great job helping with some of the slides for today. And he was the first one to arrive. He arrived before Joanna, and he helped really true up our day-to-day operations and our cash reconciliation and things like that we're struggling. And then to his right, we have Kelly Smith, you met last year, who is now our accountant. And she helps with the budget, compiling it, and doing all of our self-insurance filing and renewals. And now she's doing bank recs and things like that. Okay, economic update. I'm going to go pretty fast through the economic update because we have a lot of things to talk about today, and I want to keep you engaged. The 10-year Treasury rate, it's gone down a little since the start of the year due to a couple of the cuts that have happened. As recently as this week, the second cut. Another quarter point happened by the Fed Reserve, down to 3.75 to 4%. I also wanted to mention that the difference between the 2-year and the 10-year is minimal at this point. It's about a half point. From 2022 to the end of 2024, the yield curve was inverted, or the 2-year Treasury was above the 10-year Treasury, making the outlook on the economy bad. Now it's above the 2, and it's starting to create a larger gap, but it still means that there's some cloudiness to the economy. Here's the CPI. It had been falling through the process of disinflation for about 2 years. Disinflation is when the CPI is going down, but the GDP continues to go up. But now in 2025, it has hit a bottom in April at 2.31%, and it has been climbing since then, slowly and steadily. A lot of that is due to the tariffs that started in February, but there are other factors as well. Unemployment rate. The job market has been the major concern over the last few months. I'm sure you've seen that in the news. Unemployment has recently started to tick upwards. And so the Fed Reserve is conscious of that and is concerned about making cuts too fast and increasing unemployment. Locally, We're about the same as we were last year in Wheeling and in the state of Illinois. So it hasn't really hit us, that uptick hasn't hit us quite yet. GDP, the first quarter of 2025, the GDP was negative, meaning that the economy contracted, but it responded in the second quarter substantially, and it's sitting at 2%, which is considered good. It's on the low end of good, so I would call it okay. But the third quarter hasn't been released as a result of the shutdown. There's a number of items that aren't released currently, jobs data and the GDP being the main two. But they are using secondhand information right now to make their decisions, the Fed Reserve, and those indications are that the third quarter was very positive as well. Consumer Sentiment Index hasn't responded to that yet. As of September, it was as bad as it was after COVID when inflation was going crazy and everybody thought we'd never get out of it and we'd all go broke. And people are feeling pretty negative about the market right now, and that's for the most part it's because it's so cloudy and that we don't really know where we're heading at the moment as the Fed fights their dual mandate of lowering inflation and keeping jobs, keeping unemployment down. S&P 500 reacted pretty much the same in 2025. The first quarter was negative, but it has bounced back spectacularly since then. As of yesterday, the market was up 16.3% on the year. I will warn you, though, that if you look at other things like the Buffett indicator, which takes the total stock market divided by the GDP, the market appears to be overvalued. In the words of Warren Buffett, be careful. Then the Case-Shiller Chicago Home Index is the local market for housing, and you can see that in Illinois here, we've been a little slower to recovery. The rest of the country has kind of moved on from the lack of homes available, but in Illinois here, we're a little slow to respond to that, so our home prices have continued to increase. And if you look at Wheeling's specific numbers, our transfers are still down from post-COVID. So before COVID, we were averaging about over 1,000 transfers a year, and we're still in the low 800s, about 20% down from where we were before that happened. That said, let's look at the 2025 projected Wheeling results. We started the year with a budgeted surplus of $800,000, and our most recent calculation or projection is a surplus of $2.3 million at the end of this year. So we've done pretty well. That would put our fund balance at about $22 million and above 42%. After general fund surplus transfers, we generally drop down between 37 and 40% of next year's expenditures. Let's take a look at the reasons why we have a surplus or a larger than expected surplus. Sales tax is expected to come in 14.5% above budget, $1.8 million. And the reasoning for that is in the line directly underneath it. Use tax is down almost $700,000 or 70%. We're all familiar at this point with the Leveling the Playing Field Act. And you know that at the beginning of the year, January 1st, 2025, there were additional changes that went into effect, making more of the internet transactions that occur subject to the full 10% sales tax rather than the 6.25 or 6.75 of use tax. So if you were to take our change from the end of 2024, not this budgeted $700,000, but the change from 2024 to 2026's budget, it's $1 million difference. And if you were to divide that million by the 6.25 or the 6.75, and then multiply it by the 10% rate, you'd come out to about $1.7 million. So that said, that's about the effect that it's had on the sales tax line above it. So my point there is that the growth in Wheeling for the year was moderate, 1.5% growth. And the rest of it is from use tax migration. Income tax grew about the same, 138,000 or 2%. That's because of our continued good unemployment numbers and profits and higher wages for workers over the last 2 years. Due to the inflation, wages have been catching up a little bit. And then ambulance fees are up $200,000, but that's a misnomer. We received $950,000 of revenue this year that was actually 2024 related revenue. It was billing, due to a billing error by the billing company that they went back and fixed in 2025. So we received that money, but we're only above budget $200,000. So if you take that $950 off, we're down $750,000 for the year. So our 2026 budget for ambulance is significantly lower as a result. And we'll go over that in detail in a little bit. Outside of that was mostly negatives. Food and beverage tax was a little low, hotel motel, amusement tax, all a little under budget. Permits were lower this year as residents were doing less home projects, waiting for the results of the market to pan out, so everybody kind of knew where we were headed. So things like that are all down for the year. But in total, revenues are up almost $500,000 for the year, almost 1% from budget. But the big story is expenditures are coming in under budget about $1 million or 2%. Half of that is related to ambulance fees. As you know, the ground emergency medical transport program that we're involved in, we get paid 100% of the money from the state, and then we have to pay them 50% back. So we budget revenue and expenditures related to ground emergency medical transport. Since those fees have gone down significantly, and again, we'll talk about that in a little bit, the fees have gone down as well. So 500 of that $1 million is just those fees coming in lower. But you have the same effect on the revenue side. Then we switched to Northwest Central Dispatch for the year, and those fees, we weren't really sure on everything that we were going to have to pay for, so we budgeted for some things that we ended up not needing to pay for, and in addition to that, we got some refunds on some contracts that were that we had prepaid through a longer term. I'll comment that on a little bit later, but that was money that was difficult to get back, and we have a big thank you to Attorney Ferrolo and to Kathy Whitehead in the police department on recovering that money. It's about $150,000 for the year that we got back. If you add those two to the original surplus, you get the $2.3 million surplus. Now I want to talk about the general fund surplus policy. It's the 10-year anniversary of that policy going into place, and the board has used that policy faithfully and in a very good way. This is the general fund results for the last 10 years after surplus dedication. You can see that we've kept a little bit of our surpluses every year in the general fund, and that's to deal with the increasing expenditures. If you want to stay between 37 and 40% of expenditures, then you have to keep a little every year to stay pace with that. And here it is with the surpluses. Everything in green is something that we were able to use on something that the village needed that we didn't have the money to start with. And you can see there's some quite large surpluses, including 2022, where we were able to surplus $4 million into the Pensions and Capital Projects Fund. Here's the history of what we've done with that money. Since 2015, since the start of that surplus policy, the board has dedicated almost $15.5 million to the pension funds and to the Capital Projects Fund. About 8.5 went to the pensions to keep unfunded liabilities down and percent funded up. And the capital projects money has been used for a number of really important projects in the village. In 2021, we renovated Station 23 for $5 million. In 2023, we built Station 24, a new station that we have wanted across the tracks for decades. I remember Keith arguing for that station every year that I've been here. And we finally got it with the help of the Capital Projects Fund and with the money that we received from the federal government after COVID. In addition, the Capital Projects Fund does about $2 million of street projects annually, and it has been dedicating money to the debt fund to support the larger debt payments that we've had over the last few years, about $350,000 to $450,000 annually. But next year, it will be supporting the debt fund with $1 million as we hit our largest balloon payments. In addition, there's our normal general fund transfers. Every year, we send over $2 million to the Capital Equipment Replacement Fund to fund fire trucks, police vehicles, public works vehicles, and we never have to go into debt to purchase any of that. Last year, we helped the Stormwater Fund. There was a gap there of $1 million for the South Dunhurst project, a very large stormwater project. And this year, again, we'll do the dedication to the Capital Projects Fund. And after all those surplus dedications, here's where we end up with total fund balance, again, between that 37 and 40%. We're expected to be at 42 at the end of 2025, so we'll have some money to dedicate again. Why do we keep fund balance that high? Well, for one, we follow GASB, or the Governmental Accounting Standard Board, their best practice of withholding 25% of next year's expenditures. As you can see, a number of our counterparts or villages across Illinois there have set theirs higher. I don't think that it's necessarily necessary to do that as long as we stick to our plan of keeping our fund balance between 37 and 40%. And the reason we use those numbers is because bond agencies like to see 35% of next year's expenditures for their highest rating of AAA. I'm not expecting us to get to AAA, but I'd sure like to hope that someday we would. So we continue to follow that policy. Also, as expenditures become more and more over the years, it's probably a better idea to hold a little bit more because the bad stuff that happens costs more than it used to. I went backwards on accident. Here is our general fund balance for 2023 compared to other towns. I have specifically highlighted Northbrook, Buffalo Grove, and Des Plaines. You can see that our fund balance is among the lowest in that group. And then you have some outliers. And we've talked about these outliers in years past, and we've always wondered why do they have 100% of the fund balance. And we always suggested that they're probably saving for something. Well, watch as I switch to the next year's fund balance. You see that change? About 30% at Buffalo Grove, 20% Des Plaines, and about the same in Northbrook. So all of these communities have built buildings in the last few years, or at least I know Buffalo Grove and Des Plaines has. I'm not actually sure on Northbrook. But you've seen their fund balance go down. They've used it to build these buildings. And I know that Buffalo Grove had to bond as well. So that's how those surpluses can be used. Now we can move on to the 2026 proposed budget. We've budgeted a surplus of $61,000. That's a relatively de minimis surplus, but it is positive, so that's good. We've budgeted $51.5 million of revenue and $51.45 of expenditures. This fund balance is lower than the one I was just showing you because the expenditures of 2027 are higher, so that same fund balance with just an extra $61,000 on it is less of 2027's expenditures than 2026's. And here's why. Total revenues increased from the 2025 budget $300,000 or 0.6%. Okay, that's not a lot. I did include moderate increases to sales tax and income tax in these projections, but I did not include any of the special census money. So special census is paused. The earliest that we would see revenue if it started tomorrow is probably June or July. So we wouldn't get a full year at this point, and since we don't know exactly when it will start, I thought it was best to leave that revenue out. hopefully it comes.
Excuse me,
Yes?
do we know how long it'll take once the government reopens before
To an
they'll
extent.
be ready to start again?
Yeah, they're all furloughed. All of my contacts are furloughed, so there's nobody that I can ask that question. But we were expected to send out the first notices the day the shutdown happened. So my thought is, once they're back in the office, give them a week or two to settle in maybe, but then they'll send those out right away. Then it would be about 4 or 5 months from then that the census would be completed. Those numbers would get turned into the state, and it usually takes a month or two before the state rolls those numbers into their per capita calculations.
Thank you.
If I may. Our concern at this point, though, is part of that process was hiring at least 16 people to do the field work. We don't know if those people are still available. So that's going to be, I think, the biggest determinant of when we can start. The mailings can go out and all of that is set and ready to go, but if we don't have the field people on hand anymore, that may impact
That's a really good
the
point.
reality of when this can start.
Yeah, agreed. So outside of those couple of increases to the local revenues and sales and income tax, the reason that revenues aren't increasing very much is due to the ambulance fees going down. So we had to lower them $950,000 from the projected 2025 numbers, that $950,000 that we received, that was 24 revenue. But we have some ideas on ambulance revenue that we'll talk about in a little bit. With revenues increasing only $300,000, expenditures increased over $1 million or 2% from the 25 budget. As I said earlier, the 25 numbers are coming in below what was budgeted, so the increase from 2025 projected numbers is closer to $2 million. And a good portion of that $1 million is pension increases from actuarial assumption changes that occurred every 3 to 5 years. I think it's 5, could be 3, but I think it's 5 years. The actuarial firm goes through the assumptions and makes changes based on environment. So the biggest change this year was these public safety people are living longer. So we have to pay a little bit more as a result to cover that new gap. So good for them.
Brian, I'm going to jump in again. One of the things that we're looking at, you may have heard in the news just this week, the state is considering a bill. They've put it on hold for now, but have made it clear that they will pursue it come spring session, and that is pension reform for enhancements to the Tier 2 pension system. So if that happens, we have not accounted for any increases in those contributions. We would obviously have to calculate what that means to us. It is not insignificant, but that is not something that is currently in these numbers. So obviously we are petitioning, we are participating. I go to Springfield. The Northwest Municipal Conference is very engaged. We have these conversations with our elected officials, both the village president and I did just this past week, to try and keep the Tier 2 pension enhancements from becoming a burden for us. So that is something that we have to keep our eye on for the next year.
Yeah, and I was going to cover this later, but I'll say it now to piggyback. As we get closer to 2040, we're now hitting the time where these contributions are starting to jump a little bit higher. As we get closer to 24, they'll get larger and larger because we have to be 90% funded by 2040. So the way the actuarial contributions work, they ramp up as we get closer to 2040. We had them do projections for us, and if you want a good Halloween scare, our contribution in 2040 is equal to our general fund expenditure budget today, $50 million, $25 million for each pension fund. So obviously there'll be some changes, they're talking about kicking that can back to 2055. That will open up opportunities for the village to change their funding mechanism. It doesn't mean we would want to kick everything back to 2055, but it would allow us to kick it a little bit in order to create a gap that we could change our funding mechanism to something that makes more sense. But we'll have to wait and see how things pan out.
Excuse me, on top of that, I just want to be clear. Even if we weren't 90% funded in 2040, there's no fear that the pensions aren't going to have enough to pay out, right? I mean,
Correct.
the 90% is a
Yeah.
arbitrary number that doesn't really provide anything.
The village has bounced around between 65 and 75% average in funded percentage since I've been here, and I've never heard of us missing a pension payment. 70 to 80% is a great spot to be in. I do not think that 90% funded is something that has to happen. It's just the bar that they use for the actuarial assumptions. It's all about the funding mechanism, and it uses those numbers to do it. But there's different ways to calculate it. It doesn't have to have an end date on it. You can have a rolling period, and that would be my suggestion, but we'll see what the state does.
Those things are being discussed. There isn't a bill that is currently being considered, but the rolling date, the percent of funding are two things that are top of mind for those of us that are fighting for some pension reform from a programmatic perspective, not from a benefit perspective. But as Brian said, we're going to have some real considerations to make in the future, even if they do, quote unquote, kick the can, because ultimately, just like a mortgage, you're paying more money, significantly more money, if you just make minimum payments between now and whatever the end date is. Or you risk and assume that if it gets kicked to 2050, that in 2049, that legislature is going to say the same thing. Well, we'll kick it to 2060. But you're taking a risk either way. So those are things we will have to talk about when we have more information. Right now, it is status quo, and our biggest concern are the Tier 2 enhancements.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to the $1 million increase. Like I said, about 700,000 of it is the pensions, including IMRF and Social Security increases for the year. In addition, we continued to transfer $1 million out of the general fund next year. Last year it was stormwater fund. Next year it'll be capital projects to help support projects out of that fund and its support of the debt funds. In addition to that, we have 6 new expanded level requests that we'll go over in detail afterwards, but it does include 3 new firefighters, and we'll go over the reasons for that. It's mostly due to call volume. Here are the rest of those expanded level requests. Again, we'll go through detail of those later. What I want to point out right now is that the original cost of all those items is over $500,000, over $600,000. But with tricks and cunning, we were able to lower those numbers down under $300,000, and we'll go into detail on what we were able to do there. Outside of the general fund, there's a lot of other pressures that have been affecting the general fund, and also its ability to support with its general fund surplus policy. We've had to rely on that policy more as a result of the increasing capital costs that we've seen. For one, we've reset our life cycles in the last 5 years of both roadway and water main. That was something that Deputy Director Kaup went over with you in the last few years to keep our roads and our water main the highest of quality, which I do believe that we have here in Wheeling, especially on the water main side, where I've never seen water loss as low in any other community. And any time myself or Jeff Wolfgram talk to another community about our water loss, they all go, "Really? You're that low?" So we have really good quality capital here. But we've been budgeting over $20 million a year the last 4 years towards capital. And a large part of that is due to the increase in costs. You can see that streets have gone up, over almost doubled in the last 5 years, 6 years, and water main has more than doubled in price. With that said, we can start talking a little bit about the property tax levy. Here's the real scare for the year. I've provided here a 6-year forecast. It includes moderate increases to sales and income tax for the next 5 years, all 6 years. And that is based on information from Deloitte and the University of Michigan, who have projected out the next 5 years and have said that it will be moderate increases throughout that time. And I want to kind of go through the reasons of these changes here because they're substantial. In 26 and 27, you see minor surpluses. In 2027, the North TIF expires, and it is a very healthy fund. It's been very successful. The board did a great job with that TIF district. But it has a large fund balance that it will need to surplus out before it gets closed. It's over $10 million. As a result, when that gets distributed in 2027, the village will receive about $1 million of that. So that's in for the 2027 budget. And that's why you have a surplus in that year. But in 2028, you lose that. That's a one-time distribution. So we go down in revenues in 28 by $1 million. In addition to that, you have your normal increases of about $1 million. But those are going up a little, as I just mentioned. The pension fund increases are starting to spike a little, so that we always say expenditures go up $1 million a year. You're going to see in the next slide that it's more like $1.5 million now. And that's not all pension, but that's in there. Then in 2030, you can see that this bar goes way back up. That's the year we become debt-free. And $3 million that have been going to the debt fund to pay for debt service will return to the general fund. So that's why you have a spike there. It's a lot of money coming back into our revenues and brings us back closer to zero. Normally, when we show you these slides, we include property tax increases in the out years. There are none included here. The only property tax increase I've included is in 2028 to roll the North TIF's growth into the main levy. When we do that, it does not affect residents or their bills. And it, as you can see, it doesn't help our bottom line in 28 all that much either.
Excuse me, just, I want to point out the debt, when we'll be debt-free in 2030, that debt was for the water meter replacement, correct?
That is a different issuance that actually extends through 2032. When we talk about being debt-free in 2030, we're talking about property tax-related debt. So the debt that expires and comes off in 2030 is the debt that was related to this building, the Public Works building, and the original renovations that happened in the police department during that time.
And the fire station.
And the fire station.
Thank you.
And then in we have 2 more payments on the water meter debt, and they're about $200,000 each, those payments, and they come directly out of the water sewer fund. It's funded by our annual increases in the water sewer fund.
Thank you.
All right, so this is what I was hinting at. I just want you to kind of pay attention to the percent change in revenues here. You can see that it's generally flat or below 1%, while the change in expenditures are 3 to 4% for the next 5 years. So that's our gap that we have to cover, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of that now. The three-legged stool. We like to talk about our control over those revenue gaps, and we use this slide to do that. Our 3 main sources of income are the sales tax, income tax, and property taxes. Those 3 combined are about 70% of general fund revenues. For 2026, it's $36 million of the $51.5 that we have budgeted. When it comes to sales tax, we don't have much control over what happens. We have our 2% that we receive, 1% normal, and the home rule 1% as well. Our way of controlling that is by convincing good businesses to come in town for them to be successful, but we're subject to the economy, and so are those businesses. If they perform well, we get more sales tax. If they perform poorly due to the economy, then we have less sales tax. That's about the control that we have. When it comes to income tax, we have even less control. It's a per capita revenue. So we're not even getting income tax from just Wheeling residents. The state compiles all income tax for the state and then sends us our portion of that based on our population compared to everyone else's. Our only option to increase that is to have more people move into town and to wait for the next census, or to ask for a special census to count new properties that we have in town. Since 2020, we've had a number of new communities developed. One Wheeling Town Center, Uptown 500 on the other side, and a few others. So we talked to you last year about a special census, and we agreed to go ahead and do that. But there have been a number of delays. That said, that's our only control, so we're waiting for that to happen. If for some reason it never happened, we'd wait till 2030, and that census would happen, and we would then get the revenue. So really, anytime there's a gap, we look at property taxes or new revenue sources. And we're going to have a small conversation about that today. I wanted to show that in effect. So I have 3 slides here that we're going to go through really quickly, just to show how that's worked in the past. From 2015 to 2019, you can see that expenditures increased almost $3 million. But revenues outside of property taxes actually went down during that time. 2019 was getting close to COVID there, and so these numbers, as we go along, are slightly affected by that. But as a result, we needed 30% of property tax increases to cover that $3 million gap during that time. 30% sounds like a lot, but at that time, we were dealing with smaller numbers. Our levy was smaller, so 30% was needed to get that number up. 30% these days would be a lot more than $3 million. Then from 2020 through the end of this year, expenditures are projected to have increased over $10 million during that time. It's a very large inflationary period, as you recall. From COVID to 2025, there's been a lot of inflation. So our revenues did well as well, because during times of inflation, sales tax and income tax generally do well. In addition, we were buoyed by the ambulance changes to the ground emergency medical transport program. So during that time, we only needed a one-time 2% increase to cover any additional gaps we had. And here's your forecast for 26 through 2030. Expenditures are expected to increase about $7 million. And with the moderate increases that I included in my projections, we have an increase about $2.3 million in revenues. So there's a gap that will only be supported at the moment by the North TIF being rolled into the property tax levy, 3.1%. So we have about a $4.5 million gap that we need to think about. And as a result, we have some ideas on new revenue that we're going to go over with you. But we'd also like you to consider a 2% property tax increase this year. That's about $350,000 added to the levy. It will take what is a negative increase from the 25 projected numbers to a positive, and it will create a larger surplus for 2026 of about $409,000, so up from the $60,000 I quoted you at the beginning. $400,000 is a more solid surplus number, but it probably isn't enough to do any surplus dedications, and we've become somewhat reliant on that. So I'd like to talk about some other sources of revenue as well. But first, I want to go over the recent property tax history. 4 out of the last 5 years, we have not increased the property tax levy. As we discussed, it was because of our big increases in sales, income tax, and ambulance fees. But now that we're returning to a time that won't be the case, slow and steady for the next 5 years, we may need to increase the levy going forward. 1% increase this year is $174,210 for reference. Here's our levies over the last 4 years. For 2019 through 2023. I have these older slides. This is the same slide I showed last year because we do not have new information from Cook County yet for the 2024 levy. We're still waiting on those, and I'm sure residents at home are still patiently waiting for their bills. I heard hopefully sometime this month, but I've also heard not until December, so we'll see. In the meantime, the village is covering the cash flow gap that it has for not receiving the second installment with temporary due-to-froms between funds. And we're making it work, everything will be fine, and the money will come eventually. But for right now, there's delays.
I'd just like to point out, this slide is less to condemn the other taxing bodies and more to illustrate the need for continual revenue creation. We've been able to do that because we've been living off basically sales tax from the Level the Playing Field Act, which has been, frankly, a lifesaver, but also other use taxes. And that's why, even as Director Smith talks about a 2% levy increase, it's part of a package deal that we're going to talk about. But I think this slide is good because not only does it show how minimally we have raised the levy and how well I think we have controlled expenses, it also illustrates the need to look at revenue generation from a balanced perspective, not just rely on property taxes, but also look at other ways that we can help keep the ship afloat without always returning just to the property tax. So, we have talked in the past about fiscal policies that look at just a small annual increase to avoid those larger increases. And I think that is a good plan, and I think that's what you see the other taxing bodies who don't have the same authority that we do in order to create revenue. We are still trying to avoid always any kind of levy increase, but that only happens if we can do it as a package deal with some of the other things that we're going to talk about today. And is there a really weird echo happening? Is it just me? Like do you hear me bouncing back?
Yeah.
All right, very good. Just wanted to make sure that my egg wasn't,
I want to hear you twice.
I hope you're not hearing me twice. That's really boring.
No, just me.
The school districts, as managers Fondilis hinted at, are subject to the PTEL, or the Property Tax Extension Law Limit rule, which prevents them from raising their taxes above 5% or CPI from the previous year. The lesser of either is what they can raise. Since we were in a time of great inflation, they were able to raise their levies 5% a number of those years, and that's why their averages are higher, in addition to not having the same revenue sources that we do. Here's our levy compared against other municipalities. You can see that we're kind of middle of the pack there. And the reason we're middle of the pack is because of the next slide that shows that we're at the bottom when it comes to sales tax numbers. We're not, we don't have Gulf Road like Schaumburg. That's just big box after big box. That's not the kind of community we are. So we have to have a little bit higher of a property tax levy as a result, but we still have very good value in that. And when you look at total revenues, that's where you really see the value in Wheeling. You can see we have the lowest revenue sources, or total revenue in the general fund among any of these communities. So while our property tax rates are slightly higher than some communities, the rest of the value within Wheeling provides.
And yet, we are one of the only communities that can identify a replacement schedule for our streets and water infrastructure. Like, this should not be taken lightly. When you talk about value, this is the slide.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about how pay-as-you-go we have been, and with the number of buildings that we've had to build, with the 2 new fire stations and these buildings that we did 20 years ago, we have a whole new building infrastructure from the last 20 years, and we did that, and we're almost debt-free. So I think that's large in part to the way things have been handled by former Finance Director Kaplan, and also the board, of course. So we've been looking in between the numbers to try to find some other things to help the board and stay away from property tax revenues. So we're going to go through a couple of our ideas with you right now. I mentioned ambulance fees and how they've dropped. The graph on the left there shows our 2 sources of revenue for ambulance, one being our normal ambulance payments, but then the black line there is the Ground Emergency Medical Transport Program. We launched it in 2021, I believe, and then 2022, the first full year of ground emergency management revenue, was the largest year of revenue that we've had, and it's been in decline ever since. And it's taken a big fall in 2025 and going forward. So if you compare total ambulance revenue from 2022, the big year, to our 2025 adjusted numbers, not including that $950,000 that we received for 2024, I've backed that into 24 on this chart. You can see that our revenues declined almost $800,000 or 23% since our big year in 22. Why is that? Well, it's directly related to the Ground Emergency Management Transport Program and Medicaid itself. For one, the rate at which ground emergency medical transport is calculated has gone down over the last 4 years. The way that's calculated is it takes the fire department budget and it divides it by the number of transport calls. So if calls are going up at a larger clip than the fire department's budget, the rate goes down. Okay, so we haven't had any major changes in the fire department recently, so that's why the clip of calls going up is higher and dropping the rate. So that's one reason. The more alarming reason is Medicaid calls themselves. In addition to being the lowest number of calls that we historically have received, we primarily receive Medicare calls, which we only get a fraction of what a total ambulance call is. A total ambulance call, as you saw, is about $3,000 for the Village of Wheeling. With Medicare calls, we get maybe $700 per call towards that $3,000. And you can see the gap there. That's primarily what we have here. So that's always going to hinder us to an extent until the makeup of the town changes and we're, I guess, significantly younger than we are now. But in addition to that, Medicaid itself has been falling, the number of calls, you can see, especially since 2023. Since it's a smaller number compared to Medicare, it's not as drastic in this chart. But since the middle of 2023, our total Medicaid calls have dropped 30%. And those are the calls that we get reimbursed all the way up to the true cost by the federal government through this program. So that's why this money has been drying up.
Brian, does everybody understand how GEMT works? Can you
Yeah.
just explain, and you just said it as a reimbursement program, but I think it would be
Yeah.
helpful if everybody understood
So
how that works.
we get, again, a fraction of the total cost through Medicaid. But then the federal government steps in and pays us the difference. So if we got paid $700 from the Medicaid call, the federal government steps in and pays us the difference, the $2,300, all the way up to the $3,000
Through insurance.
through insurance.
Right, so it's not coming from federal.
It comes directly from the Fed. We get distributed it by the state. So those calls have been going down, and they're going to continue to go down because of the one big bill. Included in that bill is it makes it more difficult to stay on Medicare. So as a result, I would expect that our
And Medicare or Medicaid?
Medicaid, sorry. As a result, I would expect that Medicaid calls will continue to go down because there'll be less people on it. Every year we do ambulance fee rate survey. 2 years ago, we raised the rates to get more middle of the pack. And you may be surprised to learn that we are now at the bottom again as far as rate fees. And that's because a number of our communities on this chart here have adopted the GEMT rate as their village rate on their schedule of fees. And we knew this was happening. Chief Salela brought it to our attention last year. But we knew that we had a surplus already, and we didn't think it was time or prudent to raise our rates again after the year before. But there's some changes to the program that will affect us and could help us replace those Medicaid losses. If we were to match our rate to our GEMT rate, we would still be middle of the pack here, as you can see. And it would help us deal with some things that are coming up. Illinois signed their No Surprise Act into law in 2025. It is designed to help residents avoid greater out-of-pocket costs that they would otherwise not have with another provider, so it'll help even out rates across. But in addition, as of October 2026, insurance providers will be forced to pay one of the lesser of either the rate established by the governing body, so our schedule of fees rate, or the GEMT rate. So if we were to match those two, we're giving them one option. As of October 2026, the entire GMT rate or cost of ambulance would be covered by insurance if we were to match our current schedule of fees rate to that rate. And that would not affect our residents. It'd be paid by insurance. If we were to do that, I estimate that we would receive about $650,000 more annually, which would equate to about a 4.5% property tax increase without affecting the public, without affecting our residents' bottom line.
Insurance premiums.
Yes, there's that. But theirs are going up anyway, aren't they? All the time. But yes, it could affect the bottom line of their insurance premiums at some point. But this is happening all across. As I showed you, a majority of these folks have already matched their rates. We just waited because we knew we didn't need the revenue yet, and this law hadn't come into play yet.
And this happens across the nation. This isn't just.
Yes.
This isn't just an Illinois thing.
Okay, I'm going to move on to our other
But
topic.
if you just go back, one of the, I think it was maybe the next slide. You said that you don't bill balance, so we're not going after our.
Yeah,
so
we're already
that's
not
important
doing
to
that.
note also,
We're already not asking for the difference between what the insurance pays.
and our residents.
This is an opportunity to capture that money for the first time, I would say, outside of Medicaid calls, which is drying up anyway. So this would kind of replace that failing GMT program. I mean, it's not failing, it's just affecting us negatively. Okay, our second idea relates to streaming tax. A streaming tax is a fee imposed by the government on digital subscription services. So it's a tax on Netflix, Spotify, Hulu, any of those types of companies that our residents are using to stream at home. The ordinance plays out as an extension of the amusement tax. So if we were to enact this, we would bring you an ordinance that extends the amusement tax to include a tax on streaming. The streaming service providers would be responsible for calculating the tax, collecting it, and then remitting it directly to the village, just like ambulance tax or food and beverage or hotel motel. We collect that ourselves, and the finance department and community development departments would be responsible for making sure those payments came in. There's not too many villages on this yet. It's relatively new. The city of Chicago started doing it, I think 3, 4, 5 years ago. They were the first, so they went through the battles that are starting a new revenue stream. And now you're starting to see some acceptance across the state. Evanston's been doing it for a few years, Bloomington and East Dundee. And Arlington Heights just passed it last month for 2026, so we'd be walking hand in hand with Arlington Heights. The Wheelings amusement tax is currently 4%. There is no max on amusement tax. The city of Chicago has a larger rate for concerts, that's like 12%, but then their streaming tax rate, I think, is more like 7 or 8%. The rest of the towns that I mentioned here are all using 5%, and the village is on 4% from our existing amusement tax. Why streaming tax?
Brian,
Yeah.
it's streaming only, right? This doesn't affect any cable services like Xfinity or AT&T?
Correct. And let me dig into that here on this slide. So the reason I'm suggesting streaming tax is because we can consider it a bit of a replacement tax of sorts. We were receiving money for telecommunication fees, your landlines and your cell phones to a significantly lesser extent. And that revenue has dropped significantly since 2008. we are receiving $1.5 million less than we were then on an annual basis. And that is because of the migration to cell phones. Most of your cell phone bill is wireless related, and we are not allowed to tax that by law. So a significant portion of your cell phone bill is exempt from the tax, where it wasn't under a landline. So that's the reason for the fall, but we still maintain the rights of way that those cable lines and repeater stations need to deliver the entertainment. In fact, your streaming services use those same things. So if we were to enact the streaming tax, we'd be replacing money that was paying for something that we're no longer receiving, but still paying for.
I know I'm a broken record with this, but again, to point out, in 2008, between 2008 and now, we've lost $1.5 million. Combine that with what you already heard Brian talk about, our annual increases in expenditures due to, just standard inflation. Then combine that with the loss in LGDF over the years. It is extremely difficult to be presenting you with these balanced budgets on an annual basis. And I don't know that we talk about it enough, but this is another example of revenue streams that have simply disappeared, even though everything else keeps going up. And yet, we've been able to manage. And I know I'm a bit of a broken record, but it's because I think it's so important that the public understands how much we are doing with less. And again, this is just a great example of that.
And further to Trustee Kruger's question, this is the cable franchise fee revenue that we get directly from Comcast for their agreement and for that tax. And you can see that that has gone down as well. Obviously not as significantly as telecom, but it's down $166,000 a year since 2017 for those same cutters that are getting rid of cable and going to streaming.
Another thing on this is, it is truly a use tax. If, do we need Netflix, Hulu, Disney? On it, you can choose not to have these streaming services. So while the
Correct.
tax is there and 4% sounds, high when you think about it, it really isn't. You have a choice.
Yeah, when we go to look for other sources of revenue, we're trying to find something that is either a choice or doesn't affect our residents, because we're trying to stay away from property tax increases. So I totally agree. This is a choice you're making, and we'll go over the limited amount of money that you're actually going to have to pay on this next slide. The average Illinois household is spending $40 to $60 a month on streaming services. Here's a basket of them and what they cost per month. With commercials or without commercials, because that's the thing now. And they cost about $68 a month there for Amazon, Disney Plus, Peacock, Hulu, and YouTube. There's over 50 of these providers that I have a list of that we would send notices out to if we were to enact this tax. So there's a lot of different companies to deal with, but they're getting used to the process. So I think it would be relatively easy for us to get this started. 12 months of $68 in fees is $816 annually. A 4% tax on that is $33. So if you had all of these services, you'd be spending an extra, $250 a month on property taxes, or on streaming taxes. So kind of like your water bill, just a little bit. Those little bit of increases are always $1 or $2 every year. Same kind of thing here. The one thing I can't really tell you is give you a very good estimate on how much revenue this will bring in, because it comes down to who's streaming and wheeling and how much, which I don't have numbers for and can't get. That'll be up to the streaming providers to determine and collect and pay to us. So what I can tell you is what we're seeing in these other communities. Evanston, using a 5% amusement tax, is collecting about $100,000 a month in streaming, just streaming fees. Now they have about twice our population and a little university called Northwestern that I suspect there are a number of college kids that are doing quite a bit of streaming. but I don't know where their payments are coming from. So if mom and dad is paying that, that streaming tax money would go somewhere else other than Evanston unless they lived there. So it's hard to ascertain exactly how much of that money's really coming from Northwestern. East Dundee, which is only a fraction of our population, is using 5% as well, but they're only collecting $66,000 annually. So, you know, somewhere in between those two. Arlington Heights is estimating $450,000 next year. This is their first crack at it as well. So that's a guesstimate. Their population is very similar to Evanston's, so time will tell how much difference Northwestern's making between those two communities. It'd be interesting to watch them. But I suspect this is a low number, because when you're going with a new revenue source and you don't have a great way of projecting it, you go low so that you don't overpromise. So I suspect they'd be closer to this number, you know, maybe 800,000 or something like that. I did do some projections with CMAP household data. I'm not comfortable with sharing them. I don't know that they're right. I was able to calculate Evanston and East Dundee's numbers using that calculation, but that doesn't mean it's right. So my number that I'm going to give you is about $350,000 annually, or a 2% property tax increase. I'm hoping it's a little higher than that, based on the calculation that I used. But we want to stay conservative here and see what happens. So 350 is the number that I'd start with. And here's the good news. Here's the ugly slide that I showed you earlier with all of the deficits. And on your right is a new chart that includes a 2% property tax increase, ambulance revenue set to our GMT rate, and the streaming tax. And as you can see, we go back to our normal surpluses, over $1 million for 26 and 27. We can absorb the losses in 28 and 29 due to our balloon debt payments, and then we return to surpluses afterwards when the debt money comes back to the general fund. I think that this looks really good. As you know, the last couple of years in our projections generally look negative. So I think this sets us up for a long time. We may not, if everything goes the way as planned in these projections, we most likely would not need to continue raising property taxes in these years because we already have surpluses.
The 2027 increase levy is for the North
Yeah.
TIF closure?
Yes, so that levy would be received in 2028, but that's the North TIF closing and would not affect residents. So the only real affecting property tax increase here is the 2% we're presenting you for 2026.
And these,
Now,
and these deficits, I mean, kind of important to mention, the deficit spending, 28, 29, that's the purpose of the reserves.
Exactly.
That is what we're planning for. That is why the debt is, that's why that deficit is not, you know, terrible, you know, earth-shattering. It's predicted, and we have actually reserved for it, and we're not going to raise taxes to cover it. We've been saving a little bit at a time, and we're just going to be able to pay it.
Yeah, if we
predictably and-
waited till
yeah.
28, 29, we'd be talking about, you know, 10, 20% of property tax increases on top of capturing the North TIF levy. So we'd be talking about more than 5% in at least one, if not both of those years. And, you know, we don't like to do that all at once to the residents. We like to see slow progression, steady property tax increases when we need them. Thankfully, we haven't in the last 5 years, but there'll be a time where we return to that. This year could have been that year, but we think that if we add these other couple of sources, that we'll be good for a while again. But again, the economy will ultimately determine that. So if things went really sour next year or in 27 with a recession, then that changes everything. But right now, I would say we're not prepared for that. But
So
if
Brian-
we were to do these things, we
Brian,
would
what's
be prepared.
what's the impact to the average homeowner in Wheeling with a 2% property tax increase?
That is a great question that I did not prepare an answer for. But I can go back and do that, but it'd be relatively minimal. Let's take, if you took the 174, 1% increase, and you divided it by the total levy, you'd get a couple percent change.
I'm just trying to look at it. You gave a number on the streaming, and I'd like to know what that is, just for the average household. Granted,
Yeah.
Home values in the village are different and they vary, but just an average so folks can know.
Yeah, I'm sorry I
what that
can't
is.
give it to you right now.
That's
but
fine.
Would it be agreeable to you if I were to show up with that number when we
Oh,
discuss
yeah.
the levy
No,
for
yeah.
the first time on the first, well, maybe even by Monday's meeting, I'll be able to
That's-
provide that.
In some
That's
ways,
fine.
that's insignificant because you have the school districts and the park and so
Yeah.
on and so forth adding their levies.
Right.
And so ours is gonna be small in comparison to what they're
And I-
going to add.
Yeah, the PTEL for next year is 2.9, I think. I had it on a slide, the slide earlier. So they'll be able to increase their levies at least that
Right.
for next year.
We're 12% of the bill,
Yeah.
round numbers.
Yes.
So if you just think about your property tax bill, 12% of that is the Village of Wheeling's portion, so 2% of whatever that number is. But
Right,
we
it
can
averages
absolutely
out to
provide
about
that
20
number.
bucks,
Thank you.
Averages like what?
$20 a year.
Okay,
So,
There you go.
that's good, yeah.
so other than the Wheeling Road rebuild, we don't have any big plans for any new buildings, new infrastructure, anything other than the normal.
Well, wait till the end of the meeting. We do have one project that we talked about. I mean, if you want to bring that up now.
I'll wait.
Okay. I mean, it's
Outside of that one
outside
thing.
of that, no.
Trustee Lang is correct. There is not any major significant things outside of Wheeling Road, which is a $20 million road that we are doing piecemeal in an attempt to keep those costs down and increase our chance of grants being awarded.
We are aggressively, Director Kaup, there he is, and I are aggressively pursuing surface transportation plan money for that project. So we're hoping to knock that number down substantially. But that certainly is the albatross for the time being.
And again, that's part of the pressures on the general fund, right? Because we've been supplementing those projects with general fund money. And we'll continue to do that because that's our best practice and that's how we stay pay as you go. So I had scheduled a 5-minute break now, if you guys are ready.
Sounds like an excellent idea.
Excellent idea.
Motion to recess?
So moved.
Second?
Rufato, second Kruger. Roll call?
Trustee Papantos? Yes. Trustee Vito?
Yeah.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes, it is 9:45, 10 minutes. See you guys at 9:55. Next year, I need to make a longer break, is that? Or just submit. Need a motion to reopen this, right, Mr. Ferrolo?
So moved.
Yes.
Motion trustee Kruger, second.
Second.
Trustee Rufato. Roll call, please.
Trustee Vito? Yes. Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
President Corcoran?
Yes, Mr. Smith, back to you, I believe.
Okay, first we asked ChatGPT during the break what the property tax increase would be. I might have Mike tell you.
So it is about $2.44 per $1,000 of your property tax bill, so 8,000 was the number they kind of suggested. It'll be basically about a $20 increase like you suggested as well, so $2.44 per $1,000.
See, before ChatGPT, there was Dave Vogel.
Thank
He
you.
was almost right on the money.
Instead of Ask Jeeves, it's Ask Dave.
That's right.
Okay, I
I'm
have
gonna
just,
start charging.
rates just went up.
Streaming. We'll
It'll be
get
a
you for streaming.
We'll give us 4% streaming fee.
Okay, I have just a little bit left. Start with the Water Sewer Fund. Last year, the Public Works Department presented a new water study, and we increased the water and sewer rates 6.5% that year to cover the gap in additional sewer water replacement that we wanted to do going forward on an annual basis. And we promised to you then that we'd be able to go back to our regularly scheduled 3.5 increases at that time, and we're coming true with that promise today. It's a 34-cent increase per 1,000 gallons from $9.81 to $10.15. It's about $3.40 per bill on an average usage of 5,000 gallons per month, and about $20.40 annually. We use these increases to pay for the increase in those replacement programs and the salaries and benefits that go there for the water meter readers and the rest of the public works guys that are in there, and our utility biller and finance. The only way that the Water and Sewer Fund can generate money is by selling water, and you can see that that is not something that climbs regularly. We've been flat now since 2019, which is a good thing from conservatory point of view, conservation point of view, thank you. But we're averaging about 1.12 billion gallons per year. So the only way to generate more revenue is these regular increases. The good news is that Wheeling, with its 2026 proposed rate listed here at the top, is still the lowest compared to everyone else's 2025 rate. And that gap between the average, not including Wheeling listed at the bottom, and our rate of 10.15, that gap continues to get larger rather than smaller. You would have thought it would have gone down this year considerably because we had a larger increase last year, but it turns out everybody else was increasing relatively large as well because they don't have as good a program as we do with the Northwest Water Commission.
This is a great slide to illustrate the differences between approaches in billing. You hear people talk all the time about how much my water is here or there or whatever, and they focus on just the rate as opposed to the total, for example, 5 gallons per month, because our water at 814 is more expensive than, say, Palatine. But in the end, our rate at a 5,000 gallon analysis is $3 less. So I just think it's interesting to see when people talk about a single number, how they're kind of missing the point, and you have to look at that all-in number.
In some of these, what is a fixed fee? Like Palatine's got a $15.
So that's like an admin fee. So it's, your bill will always include that $15.40 to start, and then they charge for usage above and beyond that. So it's just a different rate structure than we have here. Some towns have an increasing charge. So as you use more water, the rate goes up above a certain number of gallons to charge the larger users a little bit more. There's a number of different ways that you can schedule it. We choose slow and steady and simple here in Wheeling, and I think it works really well for the residents. We don't get a lot of questions on how their bill is calculated. It's more about, why is my usage high?
Also, the Northwest Water Commission, which I believe was formed in the mid-'80s, is
1984.
Wheeling, oh, that was close, Wheeling, Buffalo Grove, Palatine,
And
and
Arlington
Arlington
Heights.
Heights. And I think that's interesting because those 4 towns are kind of leading in the lower rate category.
Yeah, and that's because we get our water cheaper. So our rates are lower because we're paying less for the water that we're charging you for.
And we know what to expect. So there is a 50-year contract with the city of Evanston. That's where we purchase our water, which doesn't expire for another 10 years, but we're already negotiating and working with Evanston to secure another 50 years on top of that. That kind of, that ability to understand your expenses and your revenues is significant when it comes to trying to set your water rate and keeping to it and not, fluctuating so much every year.
And we do the same with our with our gas and electric rates that the village pays for these buildings. We use NIMEC, that agency that helps us stabilize our rate over a longer period of time and avoid some of the spikes that have been happening in energy the last year or so. Okay, moving on to the Stormwater Fund. We implemented the fund in 2016 along with its rate of $2 per equivalent runoff units. And we increased that rate 25 cents per year through 2025, up to $4.25. And we are asking for an additional 25 cents for 2026, which would generate $91,000 of revenue and make the fee $4.50 per ERU. Our residents are charged 1 ERU on their water bill. And then the larger businesses that have big parking lots and other impervious area get charged based on their ERUs, which are generally higher than 1. We told you last year that we might not need the Stormwater Fund much longer. We had completed all the major projects in our $48 million original stormwater management plan. And during the year, we've been creating a new stormwater plan with a company that we hired. And Dan has been taking sneak peeks recently at the projects for me. And we do have a number of projects that are larger that justify keeping this fund open for a few years and increasing the rate next year. There's a large one over on Jackson Drive. Meadowbrook Subdivision has another drainage improvement project. And over on First and Deborah Lane, there's a larger storm improvement project that are included in the new stormwater plan, which is not finalized yet. They're still working on it. We just took a sneak peek. Here is the stormwater fee survey for the year. You can see that we've been middle of the pack, a little towards the lower end. And we would stay there with an increased 25% fee. The average is over $10 per ERU, so we're well below that. Some of these other communities, Libertyville especially, has a lot of drainage issues, problems that they launched their fee later than we did, and they're trying to fix a lot of it all at once, so their fee is substantially higher.
And that is significant. Again, we see Wheeling here towards the lower half, but when you consider how bad our flooding has been historically, I think this is really something to be proud of, that we were able to effectively, and I hope somebody knock on wood, solve the flooding problem with a relatively low ERU. And we should be very proud of that. We've had this in place for 10 years? How long?
Since 2016, I said.
All right, so there you go. And we've done an awful lot, and I think we should be proud of the fact that when you look at the comparables on this list, other than, as Brian said, Libertyville, really, we have had historically the most significant flooding issues to deal with. So this is a big deal.
West Dunhurst alone,
Yeah.
that project was
Yeah.
huge.
It was over $3
Huge.
million.
Yeah, but year after year, they had issues. Hopefully solved.
Okay. This is not the crash truck that the fire department has that we're always talking about.
That's Long Grove, right, that picture?
Yeah, that's the Long Grove Bridge, about to be replaced for the 15th time this year.
Ouch.
Okay, liability insurance fund.
Somebody's gonna call.
As you know,
It's-
we've been self-insured for property casualty and workers' compensation claims since the year 2000, when we left IRMA. We left IRMA in an effort to increase our control over claims, because we felt that they were spending too much money on certain types of claims, and we could do better in-house. We proved we could over that time. Our claims went down drastically during that period, but now we're starting to see an increase in claims that we'll go over in the next slide. Our rates for next year are relatively moderate. This is high. We usually start with a higher rate, and then as he gets closer, he's able to get it down a little further. So I'm hoping this ends up in around 6% for the year. And those increases are largely due to property and flood insurance coverage. Even though we've done all of that work on our flood mitigation, the insurance companies have decided that that doesn't matter and it doesn't count. And they are using the original maps to calculate flood insurance, which has pushed people's insurance up and our rates as well.
Can we appeal that?
Huh?
Can we appeal that
I
at all?
don't think so, but we can look into it with Attorney Ferrolo. But no, it's it blew our minds. And I was not happy, but that's all I know, and I don't think we can do anything about it, but we'll look more into it.
Thanks.
We're familiar with the increases related to the law enforcement cases in Cook County and across the nation from excessive force. And then just normal insurance company inflationary increases. You know, with all the increases we've seen, they've been hitting record profits. So just throwing that out there. And then here's our claim history. Usually this is one of our favorite slides because it shows how well we're doing. But as you can see, over the last 5 years, we haven't been doing as well. We've just had a rash of claims and injuries throughout multiple departments. This year, PW gets a good mark, but in other years, this was more balanced. Down in the right here, that's the number of injuries for the year. And we're working on some ways with our insurance provider, or with our claims negotiators, and with our normal monthly meetings on ways to improve this. And to train and to help us understand why the injuries are occurring and what we can do to avoid them. Because we have had a number of injuries that are similar. So, you know, it's about taking a look at that and seeing what can we do differently that would avoid that injury over time. So we'll quickly move away from the bad and get back to celebrating our successes. You've seen this information a number of times over the years. We currently have a AA rating from S&P Global. That's the third highest rating that we can have. And it's largely in part due to us not issuing any tax levy related debt since 2009. And again, that we'll be debt free in 2030 related to the tax levy. And we've over-contributed to our pension funds for the last 11 years. Again, because of the surplus distributions, but also because of the TIF surpluses that we have issued over the years. And we're pay-as-you-go for capital equipment replacement, CIP, and all of those TIF development incentives. I did want to mention that we will pay our last TIF note off this year. It's the last one related to Uptown 500. And there's only one other one that could be issued, again related to Uptown 500, related to the retail portion of that development, which I'm not sure that they'll ever be able to pull off. But if they do with it, there would be that one last spot. All I meant was that they don't have a lot of extra room left there to put something in. I see some giggles up at the front, so sorry about that. No offense to the development.
No worries, it's your first time through.
Yeah. Okay, Manager Spondilas and Deputy Director Kaup are working on the new strategic plan. As you know, we replace that every 5 years. 2026 will be the year to do that. And we'll have that in the first quarter as we release the budget. As far as new sources of revenue, the special census was a plan we came up with last year that will hopefully come to fruition soon. In addition, as part of hiring, potentially hiring the 3 firefighters, we looked into reclassing the airport fuel sales tax dollars that we receive and have been using to pay for crash trucks and save for the next crash truck. So we have that truck, and we have about 80% of the funds for the next crash truck. So we don't really need to be saving for that anymore. But we were running out of reasons to justify keeping the airport sales tax money because it has to be spent on airport-related items. So we put our heads together and we nickeled and dimed a number of different things that the village does for the airport, including the finance department handling their insurance and billing them for that. And we were able to cobble together enough money to justify keeping this money in the general fund, which will help offset the cost of 3 firefighters if the board chooses to add those later today. And then also there was, we signed a new banking contract at the beginning of the year that I didn't think was all that impressive, but as I've seen other banking contracts being signed this year by other municipalities, this looks better and better. So we can tip our hat there too as well. Then when it comes to the delivery of core services and capitalizing on opportunities, our hats off to the fire department today for saving almost $500,000 on their new police Pierce Velocity Rescue Squad vehicle. It's a vehicle they don't use very often. So they looked around the country and found a New York fire department that was very well off, that was getting rid of their squad as part of their replacement program. And this was able to serve our purpose for a long time as for our uses, which are less. We talked last year about dispatching moving to Northwest Central Dispatch, and I mentioned earlier that we were able to recover money related to contracts that we no longer needed because of the move. We weren't sure if we would recover that money, but thanks to Attorney Ferrolo and Kathy Whitehead and police, we were able to, and that totaled about $150,000 for the year. And Assistant Director Leva is currently, and Director Ursan are currently putting together an AI policy for the village because of our use of ChatGPT. I'm kidding about that, but there are a number of uses that we can use AI for to help lift the burden that is on our administration departments that, as you know, is very bare bones. So there are some things that we can put together that will help them do their jobs a little faster and give them, maybe a 10-minute break every once in a while. And then here's our current debt schedule, or not our schedule, but debt by community, showing we have about $20 million left that we'll pay in balloon payments through 2030, and then we'll be debt-free compared to everyone else. And we look good there as well, average being about $44 million. And finally, and then I'll sit down, I promise, pension funding. This is kind of how it's supposed to work here with the dollar bill. Investment earnings being the largest producer of funds for the pensions, employer contributions being related to our property tax levy and a smaller chunk, and then the employee contribution, which is smaller but significant to the employee. They pay about 10% of their paycheck towards their pensions.
Brian, I'm going to poke the bear a little. Can you put that? Thank you. This illustration is important because it shows how the pension system is supposed to work, and that the problem isn't pensions. The problem is the unnecessary regulation that the state has put on funding the pension system, i.e. being 90% funded by 2040. That's what's causing the pension spikes and the significant impact on our expenditures. It isn't the idea of a pension. I mean, looking at that, I think everyone would say that the idea of how this works from a policy perspective makes perfect sense, that the balance really, the burden really is on investment earnings and not on the taxpayer. So I just think this is important because we talk about pensions all the time, and pensions aren't the enemy. It's the way the pensions are being overseen by the state that's the problem.
Yeah, and I would add to that it is more affected by,
Ross just lost his.
yeah, I guess. It's further exasperated by southern Illinois, where their pensions are in worse state than they are in municipalities up here in the northeast.
A few years ago, pensions were consolidated so that instead of each municipality or taxing body having their own pension board to do the investments and everything, have we seen the benefit from the consolidations yet?
Yeah, I think we have to an extent. The jury's still out. It's been 2 years, and police department, or the police consolidated pension just started investing the way it initially intended to invest in this last year, because there was those lawsuits that that delayed a number of participants entering the pool and delayed their ability to invest in certain ways. Originally, the thought was that it would be much cheaper to invest that way, but they've gotten so complicated in the way they're investing, it's actually proving to be a little bit more expensive. But the highlight, I would say, is that for the last 2 years, both the police and fire pensions have returns greater than IMRF, and I've never seen that happen before. So 2 years in a row it has, and I would say that that is some sort of a sign that this is working to some extent.
Because IMRF, basically, since it's state, is
Yeah,
consolidated.
It's 95% funded, you know, and that the idea was to mimic that more by consolidating, and it from that regard, it seems to be helping.
And when we say consolidate, we're talking police and fire.
Right.
Okay, we kind of went over that, but I do want to mention that the village is now more Tier 2 than Tier 1 with active employees, and that's police, fire, and IMRF combined. That's everybody. Police department's the furthest along in getting to Tier 2. Fire department would be second, and admin's bringing up the rear when it comes to that at the moment. This talks about the effect of a bad year.
I think Brian just tried to get rid of me. Did you see that? Admin's.
I was talking about how old I'm getting.
Oh, okay, good.
Can barely see up there now.
Thanks.
So in 2022, we had a bad investment year after COVID, and that dropped our unfunded liabilities significantly. I'm sorry that I don't have the 22 numbers here to show that, but it dropped $5, $6, $7 million total, maybe more than that. Then we had solid returns in 2023, and the unfunded liability dropped almost $15 million because our returns were above 7.25, which is the assumption. So anytime that happens, our unfunded liabilities should go down. So let's give you a case where they didn't. In 2024, we again had solid returns above investment assumption. But as I told you earlier, there were actuarial assumption changes. And so our unfunded liabilities did not drop like they did in the prior year with similar returns. In fact, our contribution for next year went up, as I said, almost $700,000 combined. So those assumption changes really hurt us in this year, in a year that we were looking to see our valuation continue to go down. It stayed about the same, and we hope for good returns again next year to continue moving forward. But as you can see, altogether, we're about 80% funded if you combine all three of the pension funds, and we continue to move up. We've moved up almost 10% across the board since the 2023 valuation. And it's large in part, again, to the general fund surpluses and the TIF surpluses. So in red here, you see the required contribution, and in green, you see the additional contributions that we've made over the last 10 years. And if you go all the way back to 2011 and count the required contributions up through 2024, that total was $74 million. Sounds like a lot of money, but our additional contributions above that 74 were 12.2 million, or 16.5%. And that's what's keeping your unfunded levy percentage as high as it is. Otherwise, that one bad year would have set us back further, and we wouldn't be recovering as quickly as we have been from it. And here are those, the change in those contributions from last year. Fire changed the most. I suspect that's because it's been in existence the longest and has the most retirees. And then IMRF actually was the next highest, percentage-wise, not dollar-wise, because it's less people. And that's all I have for you today. Unless there's any other questions, I will leave Manager Sfondilis and President Horker to the Village Board checklist. You will vote on your the pink sheets. Then Mr. Kaup has a discussion on the fountain that he'd like to go over, and we'll poll you on the property tax levy, the ambulance rate increase, and the streaming tax. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. For those of you following along at home or here at the dais, we are looking at page 133 of the draft budget, which is the first of the 6 pink sheets. Again, a pink sheet is what we refer to as an expanded level sheet, which is an additional service or asset that we would like to add to the village budget. They are physically pink if I do not sign them. They are white if I do sign them. This year, I've signed all 6 of the requests, so you will note that there are no actual pink sheets. Also important to note that once I sign them, they are included in the draft budget. So if the board says no, that money comes out. So we are not asking, as we vote here, to put more money into the budget. You're just affirming my concurrence that this is an appropriate expense. So with that, I will present each of these, and if the board has any questions, obviously the appropriate department head can respond to any more detailed questions. So we begin on page 133. The request is titled Digital Budget Book Software. A little misleading. That is what this is. It is software that will work hand in hand with the village's new meaning 2 years at this point, ERP system. And this request does 2 things. It literally will create a different look to the budget, which is important because one of my priorities is changing the way we present information. Technology allows us to be much more pictorial, and I think the dashboards, right? The people want to see pie charts and graphs, and I think it really sends a message in a different way than just seeing a list of narratives. So it will change the way this entire book is presented and make it look much more clean. It will allow for a lot of online manipulation. That's all very important, but perhaps most significantly, what it will allow is the finance department not to have to maintain multiple spreadsheets, multiple programs that need to be, if one change is made, currently the finance director has to go to up to 6 different files to make that change and hope that there isn't a mistake made in each one of those entries. So there's a lot of significance behind what is otherwise presented as this is just going to make it look like a nice, pretty budget book. It will do that, but the important thing is it will save time for the finance department and it will help reduce the potential for mistakes moving forward. So that is the first one. We have asked for $40,000. Director Smith and staff are looking into a number of different options and expect that number to be less. So we do not think that we will need the whole amount, but we want to make sure that we are also covered to get the appropriate software that does the job that we need. Anything else? Director Smith or I can answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Trustee Pantos, then Trustee Vogel.
When would we be able to, when do you think you'll make the final decision on the software, and when will we be able to implement it?
Yeah,
Hold on.
And without a county failure?
we would implement it with next year's budget, the 2027 budget. And we're gonna make a decision.
We paid
in
for the
next few
cordless
weeks.
one. You
You
can
can
just take
grab
it
it.
off of there.
There you go. I thought you were gonna
Turn it
Steven
on?
Tyler it there for a
I
second.
was,
and just-
the sashes weren't there, but I wanted to. We would implement it with the 27 budget. And we're gonna pick it in the next few weeks if you were to give it to us, and that would allow us to get started over the next year on getting everything into place and
So we'll
and ready.
still be doing a lot of the manual work through,
Yeah,
at
for the
least half
26
of
budget, everything's set up
26.
that way still. And we just have to double check every change we make, just, all the way through to make sure we don't make the mistake. But this will help us avoid having to do all of that.
thank you.
Trustee Vogel?
Yeah, is it unusual for the annual maintenance to be more expensive than the initial cost of the software?
Yes, it is. But in this case, it's a little more. I don't have a reason for you as to why I haven't had time to go back and ask them.
Is it negotiable?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I don't think the one we're picking does that. That's just, it's probably generated by me in an effort to account for both ends. The softwares have different values and different systems of billing, so
Okay.
I guess I was probably just making sure I covered both ends.
And maintenance fee is perhaps not the right term because it also includes upgrades and all of that improvement on an annual basis as well. So it is maintenance, but it's also, whatever upgrades come with the package.
And for the public's knowledge, we just bought new financial software, so we were able to reduce the actual cost to the general fund to zero for this, because I don't feel the need to continue putting in SURF contribution for next time software, because we have $400,000 or $500,000 left from last time, because we bought cheaper software than we were expecting to.
Good, thank you.
What's the life expectancy on something like this?
It's a good question. I'm hoping it lasts at least 10 years. We don't change the budget look very often. The last time, I believe, was in 2011. So I would hope that we get 10 years out of this.
I met with, typically I wouldn't be able to answer this question, but since all of these people were at ICMA, I had an opportunity to have this conversation. Brian is correct, but ultimately I think the answer is as long as we want it to, because they do upgrades on an annual basis. So until we decide there's another platform that offers a service that is attractive to us that our current provider wouldn't, that's when we would switch. Otherwise, with the annual maintenance, we would just keep using it until,
So we wanted it to look different again.
right.
So, no other questions? Just looking for a consensus. Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Kruger?
Yes.
Lang?
Yes.
Vogel?
Yes.
Lepantos?
Yes,
Vito? Yeah, I like it too.
Thank you. And again, net zero cost, as Director Smith explained, because we've got the money in SURF.
Well, but that's a bit, that zero cost first year, because you still have costs going on.
Yeah, correct.
So it's just a nomenclature that,
Yeah, I think my plan was to reduce it for the next couple of years to offset the annual
Okay, right.
as well. But eventually, you're right, with the cost would return.
thank you.
Page 135 is the second request, this one for the police department, Axon tasers. Typically, this wouldn't be a pink sheet because we already have tasers on hand. This is a change in manufacture, and probably on my end, this should have been taken out just because it is a replacement more than anything. But since it's here, we are replacing all of the tasers in the department. This package comes with a purchase of our existing legacy tasers. So there is an offset of just over $16,000 to the nearly $57,000 purchase. Every officer carries a taser plus reserves. Obviously, tasers are an important part of officer safety as well as resident safety. Tasers much more appropriately effective than the alternative. I think really other than this is a simple replacement with a buyback, happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions? None? Looking for a consensus. Trustee Vito? Papantos?
Yes.
Vogel?
Yes.
Lang? Kruger?
Yes.
Ruffado?
Yes.
Good to go.
We get the old ones?
I think we're cycling them through.
We're selling the old ones. Would you like to buy one?
The board will get,
The board like them? So noted. Moving on to page 136, also from the Police Department. This one is titled Celebrate Forensic Digital Data Extraction Software. Much like the title indicates, this is software that will allow the police department to either unlock or otherwise access cell phone information. Obviously, cell phones are on nearly every person and provide all kinds of information in any situation that is necessary for an investigation. Currently, we are going to our neighbors and asking for assistance. Most other departments have software. This software is something similar. So we are knocking on doors of our neighbors for assistance, which also creates a delay because, of course, you know, they're using it and we are second in line. So this would bring us kind of in line with everyone else. An important tool, I believe, and certainly technology that is not going anywhere anytime soon. Cell phones are really the key to almost any bit of information you could expect. There will be, as Trustee Ruffado had mentioned earlier, there will be an annual expense. We're trying to get a handle on what that would be exactly, but de minimis compared to the cost of the software initial purchase.
Questions? Trustee Lang?
so the cost per extraction seems kind of high on all this. Is that pretty much average to what other communities are paying as well?
Average because you divided it by the total cost of the, yeah, I mean, the expense is having the software itself. But yes, I agree with you, it is expensive per extraction.
But as you said, we're borrowing that technology, which is kind of poor. So, okay.
Consensus then? Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito? Yes. Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Ruffado?
Yes.
I'm a yes also.
Thank you. Moving on.
De minimis? What was the word you
Minimis.
used?
De minimis.
That was a good word.
That's-
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a new one.
$10.
Yeah.
Page 137, from Social Services through the Police Department. This is a case management system. As you know, we have a expansive social service division who manage hundreds of cases throughout the year. We are currently using a customized database that was created for us probably 20 years ago at this point. The person who was doing it is no longer remaining in the business, but I think more importantly, the suggested management system is one that is meant to directly manage social service cases. And that is important because we're talking about people's personal information. We're talking about potential HIPAA issues. The ability to maintain and access and secure that information is essential to the division being able to do their job. So this was researched and the suggestion made for what you see before you, which then includes the annual fee is listed here too, so that will repeat, the $16,000 will repeat in future budgets. Pardon me, and then of course there's the one-time setup. So happy to answer any questions on that if there are any.
Trustee Papantos?
Yeah, what's the learning curve on this, you know, with new software to test it and get it implemented and teach staff how to use it?
That one I'll have to pass on, Chief.
Sorry.
All this for me to say, I couldn't really tell you that. I mean, that will also come down to the abilities of the employees or for the social services. But again, a lot of it will automate because it will draw from the police department records management system. So it'll eliminate a lot of manual entry and duplication on their end. So some of that will happen automatically, but obviously there will be a learning curve with the management side of the software.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If there are no other questions, be looking for a consensus. Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
Trustee Rafato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Vito? Trustee Lang?
Yes.
I am a yes also.
Thank you. Beginning on page 138, this one is for the fire department. This is a topic that we have been discussing for a number of years. In fact, probably closer to a decade, when we had originally identified the need for 9 new firefighters. About 5 years ago, when we met to create a strategic plan specifically for the fire department, the board approved a plan that included the addition of 6 firefighters out of those 9 and the construction or reconstruction of 2 new fire stations. All of that has occurred and has been successfully implemented. One of the things, though, that we cannot ignore is that there's a significant increase in calls for, we'll say fire service, but really these are ambulance calls. That's really what's driving fire service at this point. 32% over the past 4 years, as you'll see in the sheet here. It's simply unsustainable. You heard earlier about some workers' comp cases. You saw that the numbers in fire are significantly higher than any other department. We think there is a link between having our staff working so much overtime and the number of workers' comp cases. Besides that, just the obvious need for additional personnel when you see such a substantial increase in calls. On average, a ambulance run is about an hour and a half. Chief, is that accurate? So you physically can't be back at the station in order to respond to another call if you don't have the personnel. So there are a lot of facets of this request that was not taken lightly. This is, again, something we've talked about for so long, but we're unable to responsibly come to you and ask for without a funding mechanism. As you heard Director Smith talk about earlier, there was an opportunity for us to reallocate the way the aviation fuel sales tax money is being used. So we were able to get permission from IDOT, who administers the FAA rules on how that money is used. So we got permission to put that money back into the general fund. So that's why we say that the aviation fuel sales tax money is quote unquote paying for the firemen. It's not directly, it's that we're able to put that money back into the general fund. The firefighters are paid out of the general fund, and that's where you get a majority of this expense is being allocated or being paid for that way. We also expect that there will be a decent decrease in overtime. We have talked about that in the past. This time, through the work of Chief Salela and the department, we were able to really identify specifically what we think that number will be, which will be over $200,000. He did that by taking a year's worth of data, breaking down all of the overtime expense into 16 different categories. And then once you have that information, you can plug and play. Well, if we had 3 extra bodies, would any day, and that overtime incurred, would that overtime still have to be forced back if we had an additional employee? Because 3 employees is 1 person per shift, 3 shifts. And with that, he was able to calculate that just having the 3 additional bodies would reduce the overtime that we pay by over $200,000. So while it's a guess, it's a very educated guess. So we expect to see at least that amount of money being reduced in our overtime budget, which is substantial. Beyond that, there is a request for 3 lieutenants. To be clear, this is not 6 bodies. This is 3 bodies and the changing of title from 3 firemen to 3 lieutenants. And what that does is really create the opportunity for and Chief, correct me if I'm not doing this correctly, but to allow a supervisor, a lieutenant, to run a ladder truck which can act independent and therefore provide additional service. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. At this time, we do not have lieutenants on the truck. We just have 2 firefighters, and they also jump to that third out ambulance. So the additional personnel would help to staff a third ambulance at Station 44, and the 3 lieutenants would help create a still district for Station 43, which would help with the increased calls from Station 42 running over to cover Station 43's area. And it's also a huge safety concern because now you have an officer who is managing that company and that vehicle, which is an important vehicle to have staffed properly.
So all in, thank you. So all in, after discussing the airport fuel sales tax revenue, we're talking about an increase to the budget of about $150,000 per year. But again, that does not include our anticipated savings through overtime. So we didn't put that in there because that felt like we're manipulating data. But you should, and I believe absolutely will, see that savings come next year through reduced overtime.
Trustee Lang, you had a question?
More of a comment. The good news is that with some minor growth at the airport, we expect even greater fuel sales, and thus add more to our 1% of that. And the fact that we have ARF services, the aircraft reserve, rescue and firefighting. How many calls have we done, Chief, out at the airport?
We generally go there once a month for a standby, and then this year we also did have the one aircraft crash that happened.
So this totally justifies utilizing these funds because we're ARF ready now, and that's a good thing. So, finally.
Trustee Lane, can you describe what ARP is for people who wouldn't know off the top of their head?
ARP is the
Senior.
retirement group.
Yeah.
No,
I belong.
It's
I belong.
it's
Member.
ARF, and
Member.
it's aircraft rescue and firefighting, and it's basically it's more of an insurance policy, if you would. Certain flights require that you have protection on site. And the chief will probably be able to explain it much better than I can, but it requires that you have a standby truck and firefighters ready for when that flight lands, just to make sure that the expensive cargo, the people on there, are well protected.
Yes, the vehicle we have at Station 44, the big ARF crash truck, the airport rescue firefighting vehicle. So we have members that are certified on that, and they train every year on it, and the airport helps us with that training. And we started a new program this year where specific jets that are coming in, that their insurance requires them to have an ARF vehicle on standby, they will contract us to go out there and stand by a half hour before and a half hour after that flight leaves. So that expense is being paid by the owners of the jet or whoever contracted the jet. And then we provide the service to them with a minimum of 2 firefighters that are certified to operate that vehicle and operate on the airport.
And that's mainly European flights?
Yeah, it depends, Middle East and European and Asia, and it goes with their insurance requirements. So if they're going into O'Hare, they have the station on the grounds. We don't have a station on the ground, so the vehicle is required to be there so they can contract with us and pay the amount. And the airport collects the revenue, and through the finance department, we send a bill.
The truck is really easy to operate, too. Even I did it.
Yeah, and that's a $1 million vehicle that was paid for by fuel tax. We purchased the vehicle and was reimbursed through the airport fuel tax.
Thank you, Trustee Kruger, and then Trustee Rufato.
Thank you. Happy to hear about the reduced overtime. Does this pink sheet make us fully staffed now?
I think you're going to get a different answer from me than the chief. So I get to go first.
Okay.
Part of and I think for the time being, the answer is yes. But part of the analysis that went into this request and justifying it is getting a better understanding of where our thresholds are. So it is easy enough to determine if calls go up X%, that's our tipping point, right? Because it comes back to how many employees divided by, how long a call takes. All of that works into the formula to say, okay, we have a cushion of, and I am making this number up, 10% before we're right back where we started. So it is easy enough to calculate when that next need will be, and it will not be by time. It isn't just that, well, in the next 5 years we will need. Well, we don't know that, because if our calls flatline, then we wouldn't need, flatline, that's funny what I did there. We wouldn't need any additional personnel. Or they could spike, and if we see consistency in that spike, we may need to come back. It's all driven by call volume.
Figured it was relative.
Is that fair, Chief?
Yes, it's something we'll continue to monitor and reevaluate on an annual basis.
Right.
Had we had a hospital in town, there's other municipalities like Arlington Heights and Evanston who have a hospital in town, and that totally decreases their transport times and amount of time of being out of service. So that's where we have a disadvantage. We're either going to Arlington Heights or we're going to Glenbrook, and that increases our times of those vehicles being out of service. The more ambulance calls you run and transport, the more ambulances are out of service. So it helps to have another ambulance in service.
That leads me to my next question, and I'm certain that this is also relative, but would these three additional firefighters reduce our mutual aid with our neighbors?
Yes. So last year, for example, we had 184 times where an ambulance came in to town to assist us. And we know the more we have ambulance 44 up, it does two things. One, it reduces the amount of time that the truck company has jumped to the third out ambulance. It also reduces the amount of time we get a mutual aid in. The more we transport, instead of letting Buffalo Grove or Prospect Heights transport, is the more revenue that the village will collect as well through GEMT and ambulance billing.
Right. And then are our neighbors seeing the increase in calls, or is it just us?
Yes. Everybody around us has seen an increase. I know I just talked to Long Grove. They're up 6% this year. A lot of municipalities in the area have added additional personnel or ambulances and have seen an increase in calls. I know Arlington Heights is putting up another ambulance in 2026 as well.
Wow.
So they're hiring 6 personnel for a 5th ambulance.
Wow. Well, this is a step in the right direction. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Krueger. Any other questions? Trustee Rufato, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Thank you. So over the years, are calls just taking longer? Why, are we seeing that? Is it a noticeable increase each year?
Well, we've had an increase in calls. So with the increase in calls, you have that the ambulance is out of service more often, because the transport times really haven't changed. We do do a lot more on the scene now than we used to 5-10 years ago, just because of change in policies through the hospital, like for a cardiac arrest or severe calls. There is a lot more that we do on scene now instead of just transporting to the hospital. And a lot more of our more critical calls, burns or pediatric calls, traumas, those go to Lutheran General. So now you're even farther away and you're out of service more. So it's in an effort to increase response times and have more ambulances available to the public when they call 911.
I was quite surprised at the mutual aid calls. I mean, that's every other day, basically.
Yeah.
180 something is, wow.
Yeah, there was a day this week where we had it 4 times in one day where we've used mutual aid to, supplement our ambulances. Wow. It's just, there's a lot of calls that happen back to back. So if they were evenly distributed throughout the day, we wouldn't have a problem, but a lot of them are overlapping calls.
So speaking of calls, do we have projections of calls as going forward?
No, it's hard to determine what it's going to be. If we were anticipating growth or more nursing homes or more multifamily apartment buildings, then we could kind of anticipate that growth. But if nothing changes and the calls keep going up 5-6% a year, it's hard to determine what it is going to be next year.
That's key, though, what the chief just said, is one of the reasons our call volume is increasing is directly related to the amount of senior housing that we have. Mm-hmm. We have an awful lot of assisted living facilities in town, and we can break that number down, and we can show you how many calls are going to each facility. but it's a significant amount that needs to be considered outside of this conversation, you know, should there be another request for such a development or whatever. These are major concerns, the impact of those developments on public safety, and in this example specifically, the fire department and ambulance calls.
Then, earlier, when Brian was talking about Medicaid calls going down. So is there a correlation? You know, our regular calls are going up, so their insurance is paying for them, but Medicaid calls are going down.
Yes. I mean, do you have an answer for that? I mean, I would imagine it's
And it's basically just how the classification of the call is being paid, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, insurance, GEMT, and we do have a payer mix breakdown through our EMSMC billing company. So that's something we do look at every month.
Okay, so if somebody calls and they don't have it, I mean, we don't worry about somebody.
we have no idea.
So then, if somebody doesn't have insurance and it's just something that,
Respond and deal with it later.
right, okay. And that's, I mean, that's perfectly fine. That's what expecting my answer. And then my last question is around tracking. You had mentioned that we could potentially see savings next year in overtime. What about like mutual aid and tracking those types of things? And I know, Chief, that this year you implemented more tracking as far as time off and training and things like that. Will we be able to see some of those savings next year, or will be a couple of years?
Yes, so when we hire people, you know, we hire people who aren't always paramedics or need to go through an academy. So when we send those people on duty, the academy is one thing because they just go to a 40-hour work week for 9 weeks at NIPSTA. Paramedic school is something where they go on duty 2 or 3 days a week, and they also go off duty. When they're on duty and we're at minimum manning all the time, we always have to get overtime to cover that person to go to school. If we do have extra personnel or supplemental personnel, we will be able to send somebody on duty without always occurring more overtime.
Right, thank you.
I have one more, quick.
Other people.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, I'll wait.
I'll come back to you. Trustee Vogel, then trustee Papantos, then trustee Kruger.
Just to clarify, John, the anticipated overtime savings is not built into the budget?
Did we lower?
No, we did not.
So
No, we just did hard numbers of what the cost would be and then the additional revenue from the fuel tax.
So if our best guess is we are gonna save 200,000 in overtime, this is costing us zero.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
plus the increase of the GMT rate, that would be another supplemental income as well.
But it is important to point out to both your question and trustee Rufato's question, timing is important because we don't know who we're gonna hire.
Right.
You know, if they have not been through paramedic school, I believe the full, worst-case scenario is 2 years, right? From hire to actually being a released independent firefighter?
Yes, that's a good estimate.
Unless we can poach from some other town.
Yeah, I mean, and we do get people who we hire who are paramedics, and that helps us out tremendously. So out of the next group of 6 we're hiring, I think 1 or 2 are paramedics, right? 1 for sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, trustee Vogel, trustee Papantos, and then trustee Kruger.
Thank you. I do believe one of our firefighter Little came in as a paramedic, and correct? So he was,
No, we actually have to send him to school in January. He came in as a firefighter, so he had already gone through the NIPSTA Fire Academy, so we didn't have to send him again, and he had his EMT. So
Yeah,
he will be
EMT.
going to paramedic school at St. Francis January 5th. We have 2 personnel going, and we're hoping one of this next group we're hiring will also be sending another one to school.
that was
So-
part of my question. Do we have people lined up on the list ready for
Yes.
hire for these
Yep.
3
Yeah,
positions?
we're interviewing November 13th, we're interviewing 6 people off of our new list. So we processed the first 10. We already hired 1, Tom McInerney, a few months ago, and then 2 took a pass to go to another department. So we're processing everyone else out of that group of 10.
Are you gonna be asking to hire early?
If we can, yes. We're processing 6, and if all 6 pass everything,
So just then to set up that request, because I can't do that. because it changes personnel in 2025. And you don't have to answer this now, but just to set up that question, then if from those interviews, there are 3 that we want to hire, I may be sending an email asking if we could hire 4
Yes.
weeks in advance of January 1st.
Yes.
Just so we could get them on board and live.
And that would help tremendously because we want to get them in either the academy January 5th or in paramedic school January. Both of them start in January.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, so we'll be ahead of the curve.
Are we eventually going to need an additional ambulance?
So we have an anticipated need of having ambulance 44 up, 24/7, 365. But that'll be based on call volume, but that is our plan over the next few years to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Pantos, and back to trustee Kruger.
Thank you. This is just about data collection. Now that we're with Northwest Central Dispatch, can we get some data quarterly, monthly regarding call volumes so we can watch with you?
Yes,
You know, what's
yeah,
what's
actually, we're
happening?
working on a dashboard, which we just got yesterday through our GIS company, and we're tweaking that right now, and we'll be ready to send that out soon. But we do get a monthly report through Northwest Central for fire and police, and we can share that with you.
Having served on Red for 12 years, I got to see it.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
every
we're,
quarter.
yeah,
So
it's
now
actually.
I'm like in the dark.
It's a
until we-
very comprehensible report. It goes over response times, it goes over call processing and handling times, and then it has fire and police both information.
Yeah,
on
when
there.
we're making, great changes like this, it's kind of good to watch along throughout the year to see what does the data look like
Exactly.
that's making us decide to do things like this.
Exactly. So we always want to make our decisions based on our data. If people tell you we're busy all the time, we got to look at the data. We got to see what the numbers are showing us.
Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you, trustee Kruger. Any other questions? All right, we're looking for a consensus then. Trustee Vito? Yes. Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rafato?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
I am a yes also.
Thank you.
Should
Moving
work
on
out
to our
well.
final expanded level sheet, page 141, this one coming from the Department of Public Works. Essentially, the department has been outsourcing a fair amount of administrative responsibilities, and they were looking this year to expand the number of hours that we were paying an outsourced employee. And it became just a simple exercise in math that we were getting less value by extending this person's hours because we were paying a third party for their presence than it was to simply ask to make this a in-house staff person. One of the challenges that we have across the board in the village is we are very thin. We have 250 employees, whatever the number is. But we are very thin. Where that plays out most is in administration within each department. So the Department of Public Works has one person to do the administrative work, uniforms, overtime, and anything. I mean, all of the programs that come through Public Works, including dealing with the public, whether that's answering phones, the door, whatever. And when the work is too much or that person is not there, we are pulling superintendents or people who are otherwise specifically assigned to be doing that work in order to fill the administrative role. There's a list of things that this person would do, but effectively that's the general conversation about this position, is to bring them in. And Director Kaup, you can expand on the duties, but it was a math exercise of, instead of increasing what we were paying a third party for the hours provided, it made more sense to bring it in-house and ask. The total expense, assuming the person comes in at step one, which we are hoping that the person that we are talking to, who is the person who's been on site, that seems to be a reasonable expectation, is around $35,000. So that passed my laugh test. Director Kopp, you want to talk a little bit about duties?
Certainly, just as a point of clarification, we were looking at increasing the number of hours the village had retained this contractual employee from 20 to 24, which it is currently at a rate of $30,000 per year. We were just going to double the contractual services budget to increase that to 40, a full-time person essentially, through the temp agency. The delta then was $5,000 in doing so. And that's where we decided it would make more sense to have somebody on full-time. The duties are, as Manager Sfondilis mentioned, mostly related to, right now, this person does a lot of the scanning and assists with engineering and also with our fleet and facilities superintendent and managing and maintaining their documentation. The additional work that we're looking to have this person perform is the administrative, front-facing, public, interfacing responsibilities for the department. Specifically, as Manager Sfondilis said, our one full-time admin staff has vacations, has lunches, and we're typically having supervisors and superintendents cover those responsibilities. It becomes a challenge for them to be able to manage their staff, visit the field, or otherwise do the work that they're being primarily paid to do when they're having to get up and answer the phone or answer the door. So that's what we would be looking to have this person do. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Trustee Krueger.
Permanent full-time employee that gets added to headcount, right?
Correct. This would be a permanent full-time position.
So then the impact in 2027 is the 65.
In 2026, it would be 65.
Oh, 65, but that's after savings, right? So
So we would
so
eliminate
2026 is the 35.
It would always be 35, let's ignore step increases. It would always be the delta between what we were paying the outsourced company versus the in-house employee. So unless you said, you know, you also are gonna get rid of the contract that you currently have, because we're currently paying $35,000 for
30,000.
30,000 for 20 hours of work. So unless you said to get rid of that, it would always
Not
be the delta.
getting rid of that.
We are going to get rid of that, assuming we hire this full-time, this new position. We would then eliminate the $30,000 contractual services
Now I
budget line
understand.
item.
Right.
Thank you.
All clear. Looking, no?
For me?
Anybody who wants to? No. Okay.
Look
It's
at how
not
well
what
he's
we're
dressed.
voting at, it's not what we're discussing. So we're looking for a consensus. Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rafato?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
I'm surprised we don't already have this person on staff, yes.
Thank you very much. That is the conclusion of the expanded level sheets. I promise we only have another couple of things. Brian, is the next slide? That's correct? Okay. So one of the things that was alluded to earlier, in fact, it was a question asked by Trustee Lang, is are there any other major projects that were unforeseen that we need to manage? And the answer to that is yes, there is. This is a topic that we have talked about in the recent past, and that is the status of the Friendship Park Fountain at the corner of Milwaukee and Dundee. It is just over 20 years old, but what is significant is that there are major infrastructure problems related to the fountain. Last year, you funded some attempts to mitigate the continuous leakage. We are losing, Dan, 2,000 gallons an hour?
Yeah, water's cheap.
24 hours a day.
Water's cheap.
And the efforts to try and mitigate that actually have made it a little bit worse, which makes sense. If you've ever done plumbing in your house, you fix one thing and you just move the leak somewhere else. This entire topic is not taken lightly. First, obviously, we recognize the importance of the fountain just in the community in general, but also there's a significant expense related to all of this, and we certainly wanted to fix what we could. To that end, we even brought in the original engineer who worked on the fountain, who designed the fountain 20-some years ago, to try and understand what's happening underground. And even he was unable to give us any real useful direction. It is the analysis of multiple people that at this point, you really have three options. One is to simply raise the fountain and it becomes a pocket park with grass, whatever. Just raise it and eliminate it. Two is to try and fix it, for which there is a price tag estimated at about $3 million. Or the third option is to raise it and replace it with a new fountain with a price tag of about $5 million. We have exhausted all opportunities to not do a full reconstruct, so we are confident that if the choice is to fix it, we absolutely believe that this is going to be a $3 million fix. We also have talked about the idea of simply eliminating the fountain in the past, and that's been asked and answered. So with those two facts, staff made an assumption, just for discussion purposes today, that the board's decision would be to move forward with a new fountain. So Director Smith and Director Kaup have worked on the CIP in order to accommodate for a $5 million expense and a replacement of the fountain. So in preparation for that conversation today, and we're just looking for direction so we know where to move here, we met with the consultant and we wanted to get an understanding of what a new fountain, yes, what it would cost, but also at least introduce the topic of what it could look like. And one of the things that we said was, if the village is going to pursue a new fountain, recognizing how important it is to the community, and it has become the thing that identifies us along with Restaurant Row, is that we need to make sure that we're spending this money as appropriately as possible. And instead of just like the analysis of do you repair or replace, it's good money after bad. If we're gonna spend $5 million on a new fountain, it better make the cover of Chicago Magazine and really, stand out the way the intention of that fountain was. So we have 3 illustrations which are not meant to be anything other than this is what it could be. So we're not asking for anyone to vote on which of these 3 illustrations you think is best. The goal with this conversation is simply to hear from the board whether you want to raise the fountain, repair the fountain, or replace the fountain. That's the goal of the conversation. But in order to get there, we thought we would at least show you some pretty pictures. Should the board choose to move forward with a replacement, we would then engage with conversations with you about what your expectations are, and then start bringing in some fountain designers and move in that direction to get this done. Dan, we're thinking about design in 26, construction in 27.
Correct.
So, and this is important because we're losing a lot of water. But if we're going to make a decision and make a move, we want to do so with the best.
So
best
we're
use
going
of
to be
time and money.
lowering our water revenue sales?
Yes, because we do pay for that water.
We track it. So yes, it is metered water. It's not lost water.
That's what I mean, we're losing the revenue.
Yes. There is an $18,000 line item for the cost of additional water for the park this year. Which, to Trustee Lang's point, water is cheap, water is inexpensive, but it's still it's an economic consideration. It's also an environmental consideration.
So what you see here, there we have 3 examples. One of the things that we talked about that you can't see through an illustration like this is to make the best use of technology. And if you're designing a fountain in 2025, LED lighting is a significant factor in what the design feature can look like. Obviously, we are also approaching this from recognizing the challenges we've had with maintenance, not just infrastructure below ground, but also with everything you see above ground. So we're trying to be smart when we talk about how we spend money for what we get for it and what it looks like, but also knowing that we have to maintain this thing and trying to make the most use of it. We don't have to spend a ton of time, but you'll see that each of the three designs serve a different purpose. This one that they're calling, this is the Lakota group who did our Restaurant Row study, and we've been working with them on the town center improvements. They're calling this the Cascade Garden. You know, they have a lot of architectural references that they can sell you on, you know, meditation garden, and it pulls in a lot of architectural design from the Korean Cultural Center and just a lot of that. But the purpose of this one really is to illustrate that we knew we needed to use what here is labeled as the Central Plaza fountain. We know we need some place to frankly put Santa. And we also know that people use these gardens for pictures, so it has to be usable to the public in a meaningful way. This does not have a canopy on it, but we already talked about, and certainly it can be designed where there are temporary canopies put up for, because in the you only need it in the winter, really. So there are ways to work around that. This one incorporates the most water. And again, we're trying to reuse as much of the landscape as we can. There's sort of a hill there. So again, it's all just different feelings. And if the board agrees, we can get into much more depth. But Brian, if you can go to the next one just to click through these. This one is much more walkable, so you are inside of the fountain much more than you would be with the existing fountain or the previous rendering. Very cool, but not exactly, it just has a different focus. Less water feature here. You could do a lot with lights. You know, some landscaping maintenance, but you have a lot more usable space in a design like this. And then finally, you know, here you have a similar idea where you've got a lot of usable space. This one has, and I will tell you, this one was the one I was concerned with because it has a splash pad. I think that's probably not a great idea for the corner of Milwaukee and Dundee. But the point is, again, it's much more usable space. So one of the decisions we would have to make at a later date is how much of this is aesthetic versus functional. So those are just three very different concepts just to illustrate where the project can go. Again, you know, we can focus on design features at another time, but really this was just to motivate you as you make your decision.
Would all three of these maintain the, I don't know, the height, you know, as you go up towards the gazebo area right now? Would we still have that much?
Yes.
Mr. Rufano.
Just, all of them mentioned a picnic grove, and it made me think about, since the usage of that building is changing to apartments, will we have any issue with people parking there? I mean, it's long-term, but just popped into my mind.
People who would want to visit the fountain?
Yes.
No, I think there would be adequate parking available through the apartment building, but I do think that that's a question that we would need to answer philosophically is how much of an attraction do we want people to engage in versus drive by?
Right.
Currently, the focus has been on, you know, it's a drive-by thing. It's the most use that people get is, I think, the feeling they get when they're sitting at that corner and thinking Wheeling's really doing it right. So that's a consideration we will have to
Right,
make.
especially when I see like the term picnic grove. Or
Right.
splash pad. It's not a destination.
Right.
I want to make it a destination.
Brian,
Okay,
put
thank
back the
you.
first one. It's the coolest one anyway. There you go.
Did you have a favorite?
No.
Trustee Papantos?
I'm for replacing. I think every repair we've done, it's just led to other repairs in the long run, and you have to pull the plug eventually. I'm all for downsizing it too, because I think it's become so massive and it's just become an expense that we really don't need. I know it's become a focal point, but when Rosemont got rid of their fountain years ago at, I think it was Higgins and River Road, you know, it went away, and very few people know it was there anymore. They don't really think about it. I mean, people get used to it, so downsizing it will not kill us at all, and it may save us money in the long run. And also, we don't want to make the same mistake we did when the current fountain was originally designed, and letting people go, I think during build, because my understanding is there are no true as-builts out there to figure out what's going on with it.
Correct.
That's accurate.
Trustee Lang?
I like the idea of a greater buffer along the corner there, because right now it's right on the corner and folks are a little too close to traffic if they're out there. I don't know if we have to really, if we downsize it, it still needs to be spectacular. It still needs to be a good light and water feature. The lighting will take care of itself with the LED for sure, but it is, part of it is because there's action going on. There's water shooting up, there's, and lighting at night. So I hate to lose a lot of that. That's what makes it special. In consideration in the future.
Looks like we're all out of comments and questions on this. So we're not looking, this is just prepping everybody for decisions that we're going to be making.
Correct, so we really, it's raise, repair, or replace is the question that staff is looking for direction on.
Right now.
Correct.
So, raise, repair, or replace. Trustee Lang?
Replace.
Trustee Vito?
I'd raise it. It's gonna be a nightmare moving forward. I mean, water features are always a problem. That's why you don't have a pool in your house. But, I mean, it's just always gonna be a problem. I mean, we could do something cool, I would think. I mean, I'm not very artistic, so I don't know. But I'm sure there's something else we could do there without the water feature and the constant maintenance of it.
Trustee Papantos?
Replace.
Trustee Vogel?
Place.
Trustee Kruger?
Replace.
You're losing, Joe. Trustee Rufato?
Replace.
I'm very happy that you still hold your ground.
Oh, thanks.
I'm in favor of replacing it too.
Thank you. So just to be clear, that money is already allocated in the CIP, so this doesn't make any changes to our current plans as presented. What we will do, though, is create a list of next steps to engage the board on how we go about replacing it. So that will begin in earnest.
So, quick question.
Trustee, go ahead.
So are we still going to do repairs next year? Or less repairs?
Less
or-
repairs. So the majority of what we've been doing over the past couple of years has become significantly and more expensive. And we won't be continuing to chase something that has turned into a game of whack-a-mole. So we'll engage with a design firm in 2026, and we'll look at putting the project together from a process perspective as a design build because of the amorphous nature of trying to get our arms around what everyone's going to want. And then we'll come back with a process and a timeline to you once we've engaged with a consulting firm for the design.
okey doke. So, just for my peace of mind, over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to need to consider matching ambulance fees to the GEMT.
That's next on the list.
Okay. The streaming tax?
All the three things are literally the next and last thing for us to ask you.
I don't.
You are ahead of the game, as
One
always.
more thing on
Awesome.
the fountain.
What?
Yes.
Can we shut it off for given periods of time beyond the leaking water while we're under construction or contemplation of something new?
It would be best to, go one way or another. It's an effort to shut it down and to start it back up.
I see.
So right now, it was actually shut down for repairs, and now it's closed for the season. We were planning on starting it back up at the normal time in
I see.
the spring.
Okay, thanks, that's it.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. The last and final bit of discussion for today is a recap of what Director Smith brought up earlier, and that is we just want to make sure that we have the appropriate direction in order to create the legislation associated with each of the three things that we had talked about regarding revenue generation. So, President Horker, if you could, we're going to poll the board on the three revenue generators that we had discussed: the property tax levy of 2%, the ambulance rate increase, and the institution of a streaming tax.
Do them one at a time.
Please.
GEMT rate, Rufato,
Yes.
Kruger,
Yes,
Lang?
Yep.
Vogel,
Yes.
Papantos,
Yes,
Vito?
Yes.
That's, I'm also a yes. Streaming tax, you were looking at a 4%. Okay. Papantos,
yes,
Kruger,
yep,
Rufato,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
Vito,
Yes.
Lang?
Yes.
I am also a yes. Property tax of 2%. That carried. Property tax of 2%. Lang,
Yes.
Kruger,
yep,
Rufato,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
Papantos,
yes,
Vito.
I think that streaming tax is gonna be a lot more money, so I'm gonna say we don't need it, no.
I'm gonna go yes anyhow. 5-1.
Thank you. That just allows us to prepare the appropriate legislation, and that's all staff has for this morning.
Official communications, anybody? Kruger.
welcome back, Clerk Brady.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again, glad you're feeling better.
Anyone else? Trustee Papantos.
yeah. Just a reminder to anybody who's listening, if you are in the special census district, please fill it out. It benefits the community as a whole, and it means more revenue for the income tax, and in which case we wouldn't need the 2% tax levy increase. So it is important for the community as a whole so that Wheeling can keep growing. As was said, we give as much as any other town, but with less, and it can catch up to us, so we want to be able to keep our services up. If you're in that district, please fill it out.
And if you fill it out online, nobody comes to your home. Anybody else? So unless anybody wants to stay here, you're perfectly welcome to, but I would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Trustee Rufato, second trustee Kruger. All in favor?
aye.
And again, happy Day of the Dead, everybody.